Now, one of the things that happens at Activepipe is that we get asked all the time, it's like, is what I'm doing right? Is my email, have I done it properly? What does a good email marketing campaign look like? And I get asked this a lot too. So in the sort of early last year, I was talking to Ash about it, and I said to him, look, we've probably got lots of really interesting data if you look at everything going through the Activepipe system, and we should start to pull that out and work out what both a good campaign looks like, and then we'll be able to give people tips on how to make it better. So what we've done as part of that is we crunched a whole lot of data to create the email benchmarking report. Now, I know when you're creating email campaigns, we always go back to the data and how do you actually, tag your contacts and all that stuff. Crunching data is hard, and even we found that pretty crunchy at Activepipe. So it took us a bit of time to pull this together, but we're very proud of this report because what we're looking at today is going to be the report and the importance of measuring your results. We're going to look at what the key metrics are that you need to be paying attention to and why you should be paying attention to them. We're going to understand what good looks like so that when you're looking at your dashboard or when you're looking at the results from your email campaign, you can see whether it's a good result or whether there's things that you might want to do to tweak and improve it. And we're then going to look at some of the simple steps that you can do to get some of those improvements happening. Now, this presentation or this webinar is a really top line overview on the report and the key data that comes out of it. In coming months or in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be also starting to pull out in more detail the specific things that you really need to do to get to work on individual parts of what we're going to cover today. But let's get started. Now, listen, if I start to glow during this, I apologize. It's about 30 degrees here in Sydney today, and my air conditioning unit sounds like an A380, so I haven't got it on, so I might start to get a bit hot and sweaty. Anyway, email benchmarking. What did we do? Well, we crunched a whole bunch of data out of the Activepipe system. It was 12 months of email data basically collected across all of Australia. Now, that was hundreds of millions of emails. And we didn't look at individual emails. We just looked at what was going through the system. So they're all anonymized. No one, it was all safe and privately done. But 454 million emails. Now, it takes quite a lot of computing power to crunch all of that data. We saw from that there was 1.9 million individual campaigns sent. Now, a campaign is basically an email topic or idea that you're sending out. So it might be a campaign that goes out regularly to try and win new clients or introduce people or welcome people into your database. But we saw 1.9 million of those being sent out as part of those 454 million individual emails that were sent out. So 1.9 million conversations generating 454 million outputs. And then what we did was we compared them. So how does Activepipe campaigns, how do the campaigns that we're seeing coming through our system, how do they compare to general email marketing statistics and benchmarks generally? Because what we wanted to know was whether email campaigns inside the Activepipe system work better than traditional or other systems out there, and if really, most importantly, are they achieving the result that we want to get for you guys, which is driving leads into your business. So that's what we did. Now I'm about making my desk bounce, so let me stop that. Here's what we wanted to know. We wanted to know, what does a typical email campaign look like? And we wanted to understand how effective they were. We wanted to know what good looks like in real estate, and then we also in email marketing for real estate, and we really wanted to understand how we can make it better. Now, if at any time during this you've got any questions, please pop them into the chat or the Q&A, and Priscilla or I will get back to you on the answers. So here's some, oh, got a stray number there, but here's some big sexy numbers that we discovered. So of those 454 million emails that were sent out, 122 million of them were opened by their recipients. We saw that the standard database size, or the average number of contacts that a typical real estate agent has in Australia, is 2,823 contacts. So we often get asked at Activepipe, and I know that in prop tech circles generally, there's a question around how many what's a typical number of contacts that an agent has? Well, there's the number, 2,823. And I will say too, for the Kiwis on the call, that we do have this data broken down separately and specifically for New Zealand as well. So we can share that out shortly too. We also saw that 68% of the emails that are going out are including property listings. So there's usually properties inside them. And that's perfectly okay, because a lot of them are actually being targeted at people who are active in the market. And we saw that 32% of emails are using non-listing content. And it's been fascinating to look at the differences between Australia, New Zealand, and the US, which is where we've started to break down the data separately. So 554 million, that was just Australia. When you add the other countries on, whopping numbers going through the platform. And then we saw that 34 leads per user is the typical number that we're able to, or that you should be receiving through your email marketing each year. So some really good numbers here. Lots of emails, including property listings, 2,800 being a typical contact database, and 34 leads per year on average. And these are all averages, don't forget, are the numbers that you should be sort of thinking about trying to win. Now let's bust some jargon, because we're going to talk about some email some really some specific terms in email marketing that that can come across as jargony. So I'm just going to check in to make sure that everyone understands what they mean, because like accounting and jargon of any kind, sometimes we just sort of talk over it and assume everyone's with us, but let's break it down. So we're going to talk about open rates. Now, open rates are the proportion of emails that are opened by recipients. So what we saw before, 454 million emails sent out, 122 million open. That's our open rate. Click-through rates, that is the proportion of emails where something inside the email was clicked upon by one of the recipients. And these kind of follow a hierarchy. If you think of the funnel that we've covered lots of times in these webinars, the funnel of people moving down, also consider in your emails that there's kind of a funnel going on in there. The first thing we've got to get them to do is open the email. Then we want them to click on something. What we do then is we take a click-through to open rate. So the click-through rates are often lower compared to your open rates, but when we go to a click-through open rate, we're basically saying, well, if people opened it, what was the proportion of people who clicked through things to the proportion of people who opened it? And then the last one, and even though I've got a sad face on this, it's actually a really important one that we shouldn't be scared of. It's our unsubscribe rates. And unsubscribes are important because they're about how we keep our database clean. And when we look at that number, or think about that number that we talked about before, the 2,800 and something that contacts that a typical agent has in Australia. This is not a race to have the most contacts. This is a race to have the most connected and engaged contacts. So we're not just going for volume here, we're going for quality of engagement. And while volume can be one of the things that can help with that, it really is about what you do to engage and keep connected with those people that will determine if they become leads or not. Now I'm about to get an interruption. Sorry about that. So let's look at what normal looks like in email marketing generally. Now, this is some data that has been produced by Campaign Monitor, which is a really big international company that specializes in digital marketing, and they pulled together benchmarks across the world. So globally, a typical open rate is 18%, click-through rate is 2.6%, click to open rate is 14.1%, and an unsubscribed rate is 0.10%. Now, in Australia, you can see that just general marketing, we actually don't mind our email marketing. We're quite okay with it. Our numbers are sort of consistently higher across the board, although we're also consistently higher in how we unsubscribe. But 20.6 is the open rate for Australia, 3.10, 14.8, and 0.2 is the unsubscribe. So this is what happens in email marketing generally. And think about the marketing that you subscribe to yourself. It might be when you sign up to buy something on Amazon, or when you subscribe to a newsletter. How often are they sending it out to you? How often are you engaging with it? How often do you click in something on it? that's capturing all of that stuff across retail, education, government, real estate, every industry that's happening in our country. So let's look at what is happening specifically inside Activepipe and what our rates look like. So when we looked at that number before, 20.6 is our benchmark generally, but the open rate for emails sent through Activepipe in Australia is 26.98%, as good as 27%, which is an awesome rate, 7% higher. And that compares to 20.6. So our the open rate is 6.38% higher than the Australian general email marketing. This tells us that people want to receive our emails as agents, that they are engaged and that they're interested and involved in the content that we're sending to them. So 26.98 is the open rate that you should be looking for as an average across all of your campaigns. And just at this point, I really want to emphasize too that this is an average across all of the campaigns that have gone out. What you will find in your campaigns as you're doing them is that some will perform really, really strongly. You might have, for example, a buyer campaign that sends out to buyers the newest properties that you've got as a listing as soon as they come on. You'll probably find that they have open rates that are much, much higher compared to your general newsletter that you might send out once a month or once a quarter that might have a rate around this level. And then you might have others that have lower rates. It doesn't matter what those rates are. What matters is that you pay attention to them and you think about and if you recognize what they are, you know what sort of a good rate looks like, so that you can start to build those ones that are not performing the way that you would like them to, see what you can do and experiment to get them stronger. And those that are performing really well, you can look at what you're doing in them that is resonating so that you can take some of those ideas across to other campaigns. So just remembering averages are helpful, but also it comes down to specifics sometimes. What we see with open rates, though, is that as a whole in email marketing, they're becoming a little bit less important for this reason, that back in September last year, Apple introduced a policy change to how emails were received on their devices, and it was designed to protect people's privacy. So now emails sent to Apple devices are automatically recorded as opened. So what does that mean? Now, right now, you might find that you've got a much higher rate than 26%. That's fantastic, but we need to just be mindful that what proportion of it do we think is being impacted by the Apple changes? So it's very likely that your open rates have spiked in recent months. We know that at Activepipe, even the emails that we've sent out have seen a bit of a spike. And the reason for that is because Apple at the back end, and without getting too technical, because it's a bit boring, but without getting too technical, basically the Apple bots are opening all the emails and caching them before they go onto a person. So what that means is that you don't know in an open rate whether a person has opened that email or whether a human has opened that email. A person or a robot has opened that email. Now, Apple devices represent about nearly 50% of mail across Australia, or around 37% of all emails as a whole. So we know that a proportion of your open rate, out of every 100, there's going to be about 37% that are actually being opened because of the Apple device element. So this is not necessarily a bad thing, because if the email is being opened, it means that the web address, the email address actually works. And so basically, that is a valid address. So even if a human didn't open it, the address is good. And that helps us keep our emails clean. We often get, often in standard email systems, basically, if you get bounces or if you get things that that the email's not working, they just sit in your database they can sit there for years just being dirty data. Whereas basically, if you know that the email is valid, you can keep sending to it. But what it means is that we need to look at these other figures to see how well our email is really working, because it's just the first hurdle that we have to pass, the open rate. So more important is our click-through rate. So the first hurdle that you've got to jump through is to get the email opened. Now we know that there's extra complication in that, and then it might be being opened by a bot or the machine, the algorithms in the background rather than a human. A better way to understand whether our emails are really performing strongly is the click-through rate. So is anything in our email getting clicked on? And what we see for that is that 5.27% of emails that are being sent by agents through Activepipe in Australia are being clicked through. And that compares to a click-through rate generally of about 3.10%. So what we see around that is that the content that is being sent out is significantly more engaging, and that people are looking at it, are looking and clicking to find out more. And we know that probably a lot of those properties that are being sent through, people are clicking through them to see what, inspect the property or find out when inspection times are on. And so what we see that is 2.17% higher than Australian general email marketing. So again, a much stronger rate than email generally, and demonstrating the engagement that people have with emails that are sent out by agents. So they really want to receive your emails. A good proportion of them are finding them useful, and they're finding the content in them really valid. Now, what's really interesting with this figure, when you're looking at it in detail, and we'll go through this in future webinars, but is to look at, say, that going back to that example of a buyer's email, you'll probably have really strong click-through on that compared to an email. If you just send out a general one, but you have a lot of properties in it, you'll probably find you don't have a lot of click-throughs in that. So you'll need a different way of getting click-throughs in more general email marketing campaigns. That's what this tells us. Now, click-throughs to open. So if we've managed to get the email opened, we're still a little bit unclear as to whether a bot opened it or whether a human opened it. This rate is much more helpful to understand whether people are looking at our emails or not. And what we saw is that the click-through to opens is 19.56% for Activepipe emails, which is a great number. It is significantly higher than the general click-through to open rate for email marketing of 14.8 in Australia. And so we know that 4.76 higher than Australian general email marketing. Again, indicating that, yes, people are opening up the emails. Yes, they're clicking through to see what's happening in, what's interesting inside the email. And every single one of those clicks is an intent signal. So we really want to encourage those clicks. So what do these rates really mean? Let's go into that a little bit more. Well, higher than industry average rates means that your emails are being more effective, that they're reaching their targets, that they're getting engagement, and that you're starting to put into motion the actions that are leading to nurturing them as leads. Clicks do signal intent, which is that precursor to leads, which is what we really want to be doing. They're a great demonstration of the importance of calls to action and engaging content. So engaging content from the very start, getting people to open your email with a really snazzy and interesting subject line, getting people to click on things, whether it's properties or whether it's content, because it's interesting and relevant to them. And what you need to do is see each of these benchmarks for every campaign that you send out as a bit of a hurdle. Like hurdle number 1, we've got to get over the open rate. We've got to get people to open us. Hurdle number 2, we've got to get people to click on things. Hurdle number 3, we will understand how well we did by looking at the click-through rate. And then hurdle number 4, which we're going to look at in a minute, unsubscribes, what's happening to people who are disengaged. So when we work on these numbers, we see that it starts to improve and result in more leads. There's not one magic bullet you can push across that will magically make all your email immediately better. There's like a couple of key things that you just need to be doing consistently and in every campaign to just tweak, and start to really get it humming along. Now, unsubscribes. We saw that in the Activepipe system in the emails that we were sending out a 1.9% unsubscribe rate. Now, you might say, but Kylie Davis, it was 0.20 for general emails. Isn't that a terrible number? No, it is absolutely not. So while our number was higher than the unsubscribe rate, it's actually because of a special way that the Activepipe system is set up, in that Activepipe recognizes disengagement. So unlike like the big email platforms like MailChimp or that, where you have to physically unsubscribe to be unsubscribed, in the Activepipe system, if we notice that people are not engaging for a long period of time, we will put those contacts will be automatically put to one side. You can, and you'll stop sending to them, especially when you're doing automated content. This is really important because you don't want to be sending people you don't want to be constantly sending people information that they're not finding valid or interesting. Otherwise, they will hard unsubscribe you. So what we're doing with that structure is basically putting them to one side once every 6 months, once a year. Great campaign idea to basically go into those contacts that haven't engaged for a while and do a specific campaign targeted at them to try and bring them back in or see where their heads are at with it, and then sort of isolate it as a special campaign. But this basically keeps your data clean and it keeps your engagement levels up. And remembering what we said at the beginning, that this is not about volume. It is not about how many contacts you've got. It's actually about the quality of that engagement. So what we're doing is keeping your data really clean and making sure that every time you send something out, you're sending it to the right people who are most likely to want to be talking to you and are finding your information really powerful. So don't be afraid of unsubscribes. It's an important signal that people are not ready to act right now. And we know this is a thing in real estate, right? Because most people will transact maybe once every 7 to 12 years, depending on where you live. So there are going to be periods when people just don't, just are not in a headspace to want to talk about property with you. And we do have this broader definition, which is really around disengagement or just absent engagement. So starting to move some of those people out of your Activepipe system, but they're still very much inside your CRM. This is designed to keep your database clean, so it's a good thing. And it means that anything that sort of comes across as spammy is that it helps you stop doing that. And I know when I do quite a lot of shopping online, and every time you buy anything online these days, you're asked to sign up to an email newsletter. You get a percentage off if you do it. And I might be in the market to buy an outfit or something once every quarter, or even once every twice a year. I don't need an email every week, and I certainly don't need one every day. And when you get content that is not relevant to you or too frequent for how comfortable you are in the transaction, people start to unsubscribe. So our practices in this space are designed to prevent that happening and keep people connected with you, because our goal is to get you deliver leads and come from clean data, not have the biggest database in the world. You could have the whole biggest database in the world by simply having every single contact in Australia on it, but it wouldn't mean that you sold necessarily any more property. So also the nature of real estate makes this a really intense industry. And we know that people are, very engaged while they're in that selling or buying mode, when they're hungry for information, when they're desperately looking at you for answers, and when they're desperately trying to buy something, they are going to want to receive absolutely everything you've got to send them. And what this tells us, and what this is really an important thing for us to notice, is that it underlines the importance of letting people tell you when their headspace has changed. And inside Activepipe, you'll see we encourage you to send out surveys regularly. They're designed specifically for that. Now, we can all look at surveys and go, oh, surveys are so boring, I don't want to fill one in. Or you can try and make them fun. You can put great headlines on them. You can share them out in a way that basically says, look, I was buying, but we've now happily bought. So I just want to let you know that my preferences have changed, and so I don't want to receive information from you quite as frequently. That person immediately goes into maybe your quarterly or your annual newsletter, where you're just keeping people in contact and staying warm with them. So, or sellers, I've happily sold, now I'm in the market to buy. You can move them across and give them a better service experience by knowing that their preferences have changed. So it's really important that we understand where people's heads are at when we're doing email marketing, and understanding if our unsubscribe rates are really spiking quite high, it means that you're not in that headspace and you need to adjust how you're thinking and the content that you're sending out. So we are smashing through this, Chris. So if anyone's got any questions, please pop them into the chat. But how do you improve your results? Well, we've got lots of resources to help. You should be looking at your dashboard every single day, because that's going to be telling you what's going on around any email campaigns that you've sent out and what the engagement levels are. It's going to help you see your open rates. It's going to help you see the click-throughs, but most importantly, it's going to tell you what is being clicked on and how often it's being clicked on and who's clicking on it. Because at a dashboard level, while we couldn't see this when we were crunching the data for the report, but at a dashboard level for your individual data that you have access to, you can see what people are doing with your emails, and that is gold in terms of information. It should be informing your phone conversations, or it should be informing the priority that you're giving to calling people. It should be informing the types of conversations that you're having with people, because it's telling you exactly what they're interested in and exactly where their heads are up. And also really importantly is that spending a little bit of time looking at this data every time you're about to do a new campaign gives you really good insights into what's working in the different campaigns and what you should be repeating or doing more of, and also equally not doing so much of if it's not working so well. So how do we get better email results? Well, how do we get our open rates? How do we get more opens? Don't rely just on the templated email, subject line. Think about what that subject line is. Try and make it newsy. Try and make it, make it relevant. Think about it being like a media headline or an online headline, rather than being a label, which is, market update. Just, market up 10% or whatever the market's done. Try and make it really newsy. Segment your contacts. We say this every webinar, but absolutely the power of getting this for email marketing right is to segment your contacts. So making sure you know who's a buyer, who's a seller, and then out of that, who's an upsizer, who's a downsizer, who's a VIP, or who's a past client that you sold something to 10 years ago. Make sure that you've got tags that are flexible enough to build multiple audiences. There's no one shiny button you can push for this. A general newsletter is great, but a general newsletter will get you average results. What you want to be doing is segmenting and getting really specific. And we're going to talk about that in coming webinars. It's really worthwhile, especially when you're new to Activepipe and when you're getting started in the system, to go slow before you go fast. And when I say that, I mean setting up email automations, planning what you're going to do, and setting up your surveys to capture those mindset changes. So thinking through at the start exactly what experience you want people to have. And, if they're a buyer, how often do we want to send them something? Are we going to send them something twice a week? Are we going to send them an update when they first sign up? If they're a seller, how often are we going to hit them up? What sort of information do we want to share with them? What does the shape and the flow of that campaign look like? So do the work at the start to make those campaigns and automations, get them set up properly. You'll be amazed at the results when you do, even though it might feel a bit slow and you just want to get stuck in. Once you've got them out there, you will start to see results a lot faster and a lot more strongly, and you'll have a great system that you can then pop in and monitor sort of once every 8 weeks, once a quarter, once you get into the flow of it, that takes minimal maintenance. We really do think that you should plan and prepare campaign streams in advance and consider topics other than property listings. Now, property listings are fantastic for people who are active in the market to buy right now. They are fantastic if you're sharing what the price is that they sold for with people who are potential sellers, and they are of interest, but only a bit, to everyone else. So if you are doing general newsletters, then you need to ease back a little bit maybe on the property listings and do more around sort of general information about the market, how it's performing, information about how to buy, sell, things you need to know, tips and tricks, all of that sort of stuff. So really thinking about the content that you want to be sharing based on the type of campaign that you're sending out and the audience that you're sending it to. Doing those things will get you better click-throughs across all of your emails. And I really want you to start to get specific. So you need to really start to review all of your individual campaigns, especially if you dived into Activepipe to kick off and you've got campaigns going everywhere. Structure a day or two to sit down and really start to pull them apart and work out what's working, what you could be doing better. If you need some help with that, we've got some resources at the end that can work on that. How are all of your individual campaigns going against benchmark, not just across the whole? Like across the whole is great, but then also start to dig right in. Create a project or 2 or 6 or however many you need, depending on how many campaigns you've got. Start with those campaigns that are not performing the way that you want to, and put some time in your calendar to work on them. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So put some time aside and really start to look at the numbers and think about what you could be doing to improve them based against how they're performing. And then experiment or measure, experiment and learn. So change one thing each time. So if you see that you've got a campaign that's really performing quite badly across a couple of different benchmarks, commit to changing it 3 or 4 times, but each time only change one thing. So the first time, just change your email, your subject line. See how that goes. Then the second time, change some of the content maybe that you've got inside it. Third time, maybe change the layout, or just do individual separate things each time, so that you can start to see how things come together, as opposed to changing everything at once and then not really being sure about what worked. We're getting some comments on the chat. Okay. And then how we can help. Well, we've got a pile of information about the dashboard inside Activepipe through our library of content. There's upgrades available for real estate content or market insights, and these are great ways to share information with non-buyers or sellers at the moment. And if you want some help, our success@activepipe.com is the email you should reach out to set up some, if you need your handheld, and our support team is on call to help with automation building. And we've got a fabulous library of webinars that go into some of this in more detail, talk about building trust and lots of other topics. So I'll share the resources slide here.